Hello YouTube and welcome In-Flightsim with me as we review the JustFlight Hawker Hunter for FSX and prepare 3D. I'd like to thank the wonderful guys over at flightsim.com who reached out to me after I purchased the JustFlight Hunter from their brand new website. I'll leave a link for the website in the description below. Let's go ahead and check it out. The Hawker Hunter was the first jet-powered aircraft to be designed by Hawker for the Royal Air Force in the late 40s and early 50s, and was designed to take advantage of the newly developed Rolls-Royce Avon turbojet engine. The aircraft also featured a swept-wing design. Hunters were also used by two RAF display teams, the Black Arrows, who on one occasion recorded a record-breaking loop of 22 Hunters in formation, and then later on the Blue Diamonds, who flew 16 aircraft. The Hunter was also widely exported, serving with over 21 overseas forces. During the 1960s, following the introduction of the English Electric Lightning, the Hunter lost its role as an interceptor. The aircraft then transitioned into being operated as a fighter bomber and aerial reconnaissance. The two-seat version remained in service and training roles with the RAF and the Royal Navy until the early 90s. 60 years after its original introduction, it was still active service, being operated by the Lebanese Air Force until 2014. Today, the aircraft can still be seen in use with contract aggressor companies and also on the display circuit. At the time of this review, the JustFlight Hawker Hunter was priced at $39.99 US dollars, or £32.63. Downloading was easy. A few clicks of the mouse from the brand new store and it was on my PC within a flash. The download size was relatively small, only 291 megabytes, so not a lot at all when you compare it to other aircraft out there. The installation was trouble-free. The installer gave you the option of which simulator you wanted to install the aircraft to, and then with that being FSX and P3D, and then once you chose one of those two, you got further options such as P3D version 1, 2, 3 and 4. A product activation code was also required, but this is given to you once a successful payment has been made. So let's just have a quick chat about the documentation that comes with the Hunter. It includes a 32-page manual which details various aspects of the aircraft, which include installation and support, walk around of the aircraft showing off various features of the external model, a panel guide, system guide, a section about flying the Hawker Hunter, and a procedural checklist. A walkthrough startup procedure is also included within the manual to get you off the chocks quickly, and within the sim there is a checklist which can be accessed through the kneeboard in the drop-down menu. As we enter the cockpit, the first thing you notice is just how tight this aircraft is. This just goes to show the level of modelling is close to the real thing. You also notice the weathering effects on the panels. This is a nice touch considering she's such an old aircraft. As you can see, the instruments are clear and easy to read. Their animations are smooth, as you'll see later on as we fly. One slight disappointment, which would have been a nice feature, is if the needles had some sort of vibration when you are flying. This isn't a big deal, it just would have been a nice little extra that would have added to the realism. Within the cockpit is the retractable gun sight. This can be toggled in and out using this switch. A right click will bring the gun sight out, and a left click will stow the gun sight. A nice feature of this aircraft is the fact that it comes with a cold and dark option, which can be accessed through a pop-up menu by pressing Shift and 3. Please note that this can only be used once during each flight. This allows the user the flexibility to operate the aircraft in a more realistic manner. A startup procedure is given to you in the manual. There is also a step-by-step guide on how to start the aircraft from a cold and dark state. This is also included in the manual. The Hawker Hunter is not a difficult aircraft to operate, and JustFlight appear to have done a good job in replicating the systems, such as electrical, fuel and hydraulic. Fuel control is straightforward. and can be operated here on the right hand console. Provided that the fuel tank selector is in the auto position, the user should have no troubles during flight. The user must also ensure that the flying controls are powered. These can be turned on here. Note that the indicators are now a solid black colour, indicating power is now applied. If power is not applied, the user will struggle to control the aircraft. The night lighting within the aircraft is nice and subtle. It can be turned on here on the right hand side. The instruments give off a nice glow, but nothing too bright so that you aren't blinded against the dark night sky. Also modelled is an option for an additional UV light, which can be turned on just below. There are one issues with this. I found that the instruments tend to grow in size slightly. Also, the altimeter turns black, making it difficult to read your height. It's worth noting also that there are no floodlights included in the aircraft. This is a feature true to real life. The Hunter is one of those aircraft that looks right from every angle, and JustFlight have captured this perfectly. As we view the aircraft from various angles, you can see that the airframe will give up certain intake scoops, grills and exhausts. The texturing is also superb. However, I did find a few issues with decals being in the wrong position. This isn't a huge issue, as you would really have to be searching for them in order to see it. It's worth noting that with this aircraft, PBR textures are not included, as PBR did not hit our flight simulator until after this aircraft was released. However, bump mapping is also included in the aircraft, which adds another level of realism. The aircraft comes with 13 highly detailed liveries. We will now run through them all. This is 92 Squadron from the Royal Air Force. Royal Air Force Treble 1 Squadron Black Arrows Display Team. Royal Air Force 92 Squadron Blue Diamonds Display Team. The Royal Netherlands Air Force Dutch New Guinea circa 1962. Royal Air Force Fighter Weapons School. Royal Air Force No. 4 Flying Training School. My personal favourite, privately owned Misdemeanor. An example from the Royal Saudi Air Force. Royal Air Force No. 20 Squadron. Royal Air Force No. 208 Squadron. Rhodesian Air Force No. 1 Squadron. Swiss Air Force Typeface Scheme. And finally, the Indian Air Force Thunderbirds Aerobatic Team. External store options can be selected by toggling a pop-up panel, which can be accessed through Shift and 3. For this example, I'll be showing you the FGA9. Here on this panel we have two options. We have the cold and dark state, and we have the external store configuration selector. Note that there are 4 selection options. We have clean, tanks, bombs and rockets. It's worth noting that the store configurations are predetermined. They cannot be changed. This is a little disappointing, as it would have been nice to have the choice of where to load stores. It is also worth noting that with selection of each stores, it will change the aircraft weight automatically, depending on how heavy the ordnance are and how much fuel is carried externally. This is a nice feature which will affect the aircraft performance as we fly. If you wish to add chocks, blanks and a stepladder, you can do by toggling this switch. Removal of the pilot can also be carried out by toggling the switch above. To add the ground power unit, toggle this switch here. Within the external model, an animated pilot is included. This is a nice touch, as many developers seem to neglect this. Periodically, the pilot will scan the horizon for other aircraft or visual reporting points. An aircraft brake chute is also included in the model, however it is worth noting that this is only available on the FGA9. The sound set included in the aircraft is also quite exceptional. Rather than me telling you about it, we'll just go ahead and listen. I will begin with the engine start sequence from both inside and outside the cockpit. The first thing that you notice when you release the brakes is that you do not require a lot of power to get her off the chocks. She will pull forward with only a few % of power added. Taxiing is smooth, and provided that you can get to grips with differential braking, as this is a primary source of steering, you shouldn't have any issues. During the takeoff cycle, the manual states to hold the aircraft on its brakes and gently increase the power to full. I did however notice that at about 85% power, she will begin to creep forward. Once the brakes are released, she doesn't waste any time in picking up speed. It's worth noting that depending on what external stores you have fitted, this will depend on how long the takeoff run will be. Within the manual, it states that a V-rotate speed of 125 knots and a V-liftoff speed of 145 knots are required. True to its word, the aircraft smoothly leaves the Earth behind at about 145. In the low-level environment, she handles like a dream, where you have a large envelope to operate her in. At both high and low speeds, the aircraft handles well. I had no issues and could easily achieve 6 times the force of gravity. Caution should be taken, however, when carrying out low-speed handling, as stalls can be induced. This is easily observed when a buffeting sound can be heard from inside the cockpit, as you will hear soon. During my testing, I found that a minimum of 4,000 feet was needed to safely recover from a stall. In the high-level environment, she is also still a dream to fly. A little sluggish, however this is to be expected in the thinner air. Stalls and spins are easily entered into, however it is not difficult to leave them. Just keep your wits about you and you'll be fine. Now on to what the aircraft's been doing well for decades, aerobatics. Within the manual are recommended entry speeds for certain manoeuvres such as loops and rolls. The Hunter is effortlessly graceful in carrying out these manoeuvres as I tried to recreate my favourite Hunter, Misdemeanor's display routine. She handled everything I could throw at her, whether it was trying to be smooth and graceful or hard and aggressive. The only thing I had to be careful of was to watch the airspeed, as it can drop like a rock if high G is sustained for too long. For those of you that have VR, you'll know what it's like to be sat in an aircraft. You get a real sense of immersion, and the Hunter is no exception. Having the ability to look around and over your shoulder and look at your wings. When you get inside the Hunter without VR, you notice that it's a tight cockpit, but when you put VR on, it feels as though your shoulders are about to explode outside. It was funny, when I closed the canopy, I actually felt like I needed to lower my head slightly so that it could slide past. This just goes to show how accurately modelled the aircraft is. I used the Oculus Rift and found that the instruments are perfectly fine to read. Obviously not HD, but this is a limitation of the Rift and not the aircraft. The only issue I had was using the Rift with the Hunter was I had a little sense of vertigo when carrying out a few manoeuvres. This is my issue, not the aircraft. Outside the sim, there is a selector so you can choose whether you want to have either castering nose wheel steering or a steering nose wheel. This is a nice touch and allows for flexibility to suit the users. Also, a highly detailed paint kit is available as a separate download from the JustFlight website. To summarise my experience with this aircraft as hugely positive would be an understatement. The level of immersion is fantastic, particularly in VR. I felt like I'd achieved a boyhood dream of flying a Hunter. For the price, it's reasonable considering the level of detail and the sheer sense of pleasure you can gain from strapping this machine to your back. I don't believe the aircraft to be study level, however, the aircraft does seem to have a certain level of complexity that the user will need to understand before taking flight. During my testing, I didn't notice any drop in frame rates, with settings in the mid to high region, achieving a smooth experience throughout. Overall, I would rate this product a solid 9.5 out of 10. I have dropped a few small marks for issues and disappointments with texturing, configuration selection, and the lack of key assignments, such as for the brake chute. I strongly believe if these discrepancies are rectified, this aircraft would be a 10 out of 10 and provide a greater flying experience. If this aircraft is not in your hangar, it certainly should be. You will not be disappointed. I hope you have enjoyed watching this video, and I look forward to seeing you again in Flight Sim.